And it's all powered by the Vincent Financial Group, 770-741-0120. Coming up this weekend, let's talk about the importance of your tax strategy and the importance of having tax buckets in your retirement plan. We'll get to that plus a lot more. My name is Mark Owens. As always, investment advisor Aaron Vincent is here. CFP Matthew Decker is here. Gentlemen, how y'all doing?
Wonderful.
Doing great.
So, world traveler over here, Matt, I'm talking about Aaron. I say Matt as I point to Aaron. A couple of weeks ago, we were talking in South Africa on a mission trip, and then you followed that up with not maybe a trip fishing, some time with family, maybe some time at home on the farm. No, my man goes and runs with the bulls in Spain.
Yes.
Tell me about it.
Well, I can't say that it was officially on my bucket list because I never expected to be in Pamplona, Spain, in early July. It wasn't necessarily something I was planning for, but opportunity came up, and I mean, when you're there, and it's a tradition. I think it's pushing 800 years old. Mm-hmm. This running with the bulls, and if you're going to be there, you got to do it. And it was amazing.
Okay, so how does this work? Paint the picture. Do you line up? Is it like running the peach tree where everybody lines up and stretch? I mean,
it does feel kind of like that because it's just mass chaos.
Okay.
People are everywhere, and everyone's trying to get to the same place and to get there quick. And so that's how it starts. It's like 6 a.m. because they run the bulls at 8, and it's like I said, it's a tradition for hundreds of years. They're not going to change it. And so if you're not in place by the right time, I think it's 7:50 a.m. You've got to be in this certain place, or you're just not doing it. And you're all the way to Spain, and you missed it. So you're there early. You're waiting, and you're waiting for the police and everyone organizing this thing to get everything in order. And what happens is there's a giant crowd in a small town. I mean, Pamplona is not a big city, but I think they said there were somewhere around 3 million people there for this festival. I mean, it's a week-long festival that they do, and they run the bulls every morning. And we were there. I think it was a Thursday morning. It was, and so you're there, and at 7:50 a.m., if you're in position, they shoot one firecracker, like a rocket off, and it's allowed, and that like sparks the bulls to leave their corral, and then they just, these things are huge, and their horns are sharp and they're fast, and so they take off, and then depending on where you are on this route from where they start to where they end, we were kind of looking back from where we started, and you can just see it's probably 100 yards back, Dead Man's Corner, they call it.
Yeah. Where
the bulls turn this corner, and then you just see them coming up the street towards where we were standing. And in that moment, I'm not sure I've ever had an adrenaline shot just going through my veins like that moment when these bulls come around the corner. Because leading up to this, the days before, we're researching it, we're looking at it, we're talking to our friends that were there. They're doing it with us.
Filling out life insurance forms.
Exactly.
Doing all the proper
making
things.
Sure making sure your estate plan's in order. And, so because my wife and I both ran. Now, she's kind of a legend because not many females run. I mean, that's me saying that from my one-off experience. But I look around, thousands of people, and it's 99% guys. But we ran together. So
Jessica running is the highlight for me of the story.
She's all about
she's a freaking warrior.
She is, man. She was not going to be told no about running with the bull. She was in it. I love that about her.
So how close did you come to getting nicked, to getting knocked over, to getting...
So I touched one of the bulls.
Did you?
I did. Now
it was in a cage and it was tied up, but still.
Yeah. No. He had corks on his horns and it was in the zoo. No, I'm just kidding. No, it was, they run by, and I'll say this was the thing. It's a lot of prep and a lot of walking and a lot of waiting. And then it's, as far as where we were, it's over in like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But yeah, these giant, majestic, muscular animals with huge horns run right past you, and you're seeing the chaos ensuing behind you where they're coming from. People got, seriously hurt. Mm-hmm. We saw people, I assume they lived, but it's literally like, I don't know. They were in bad enough shape where I'm like, I don't know if they make it out of that one. Like, it was bad.
Now, obviously, this is voluntary, but do you have to fill out waivers and forms, or do you just show up?
We didn't fill anything out.
You
have to be 18.
You have to, I'm glad there's some kind of standards set.
But nobody even asked me for my ID. Like, obviously, I'm over 18, but there was no formal, like, I think it's just like enter at your own risk.
I was just going to the cafe to get some breakfast and ended up running with the bulls. I don't know how this happened.
But it was amazing. It's one of these things. My wife and I just loved the culture of it. It was cool because what they do as part of this festival, everyone wears the same thing.
Yeah.
Everyone's decked out in all white. And if you're not dressed like they're dressed, if you just kind of shrug it off and say, I'm going to wear whatever I'm going to wear, it's a huge disrespect to them.
Okay.
Because it's their culture. Because the point of it is everyone's the same. You don't know who the ditch diggers are or who the doctors and lawyers are. Everyone's in this together, and they're in part of this hundreds and hundreds of year old ceremony, this tradition, and it's a party. And what I love about the Spaniards, at least in this town, they're all so happy. Like, number one, a lot of them have been partying for a few days, but you'd see foreigners, usually Americans or others, and they're the only ones who are drinking too much and getting into it, like getting aggressive or getting in fights. But the Spaniards will go up to him, buy him a drink, give him a hug, pull him aside. Guys, we're just all here to have a good time. Like, they're very... it was just awesome.
That's
it was
awesome.
Great. It was
I love how you said that, though. It doesn't matter if you're a trash man or you're a doctor. Getting gored's going to hurt.
It's going to hurt.
It doesn't matter what your tax bracket is.
But even going into it, we're looking on YouTube for, the complete catastrophes that are happening in years past. And I mean, if anyone out there is going to run with the bulls, don't look up the gorings and the injuries that happened beforehand, because they'll make you think twice.
It's like, don't watch the movie Alive before you get on an airplane.
That's right.
It's pretty smart to do. 770-741-0120, retireatlradio.com. Well, while you were running with the Bulls, me and Matt Decker were having a conversation a couple of weeks ago about RMDs. I want to pick up from there because Matt may have gotten in a little trouble because he made the grand statement that required minimum distributions are voluntary.
Yeah.
And Matt, for those that missed it, all right, state your case again about
RMDs. Why did that
RMDs.
get you in trouble?
Why did it get me in trouble? Yeah. The compliance people, they don't like statements like that. And sometimes,
even if they're true?
Yeah, sometimes I'm fast and loose and say some things. But all right, I mean, I'll make the case. Yeah, RMDs are voluntary. I'll say it again. I'll stake my name on it. RMDs are voluntary. So let's start with what makes you or what puts you into the position of having an RMD, required minimum distribution. Number one, you got to have qualified money. That would be any IRA, 401k, 403b, SEP, Simple TSP, so on and so forth. If you got qualified money, you're going to have an RMD.
Any money not been taxed yet.
Any money not been taxed yet. You got qualified money past the age of, for most people now, it's going to be 73. It could be 75, depending on when you were born. You got qualified money past the age of 73, probably going to have an RMD.
RMD, required minimum distribution.
As in forced taxation.
Yes.
And we hear a lot about, from some of our clients, they hate their RMDs because, it's forced taxation. I don't want to take money out. But the government, they want those tax dollars. And so, no, they're not just going to let you not pay taxes, earn investment returns, and then, never pay taxes. They want that tax revenue. And so I said RMDs are voluntary because you don't have to have qualified money when you're 73. You could spend it all beforehand. You could do Roth conversions to get out from RMDs. And so, I made the statement that it's voluntary. You can plan your retirement to not have RMDs. And I think that there's a case to be made that actually might work well for some people.
That's a fact. I don't know how. I mean, I can understand somebody wanting to get crystal clarity on that.
Right.
And make sure we're not talking, getting out over our skis here. But all that you just said is definitely true.
It's a true statement. So walk us through it.
Yeah.
In your sense, and you've seen this happen before, how can we find the loophole to where RMDs can be voluntary? What can we do?
Well, I'm getting riled up already because what we're talking about, RMD is the headline we're talking about right now, but we're talking about taxes. And this is something near and dear to both Matt and I, because I'm actually not concerned about some of the risks that a lot of retirees or a lot of folks out there are concerned about. I'm personally not that concerned about stock market volatility. We can plan for that. It's always been around. It will always be around. We can plan for that. I'm not that concerned. I mean, these are real things, but I'm not that concerned about the news that says Social Security is going to be reduced by a certain amount by a certain year. No one knows exactly when, but I'm not happy about that. I don't like that, but we can plan for that, right? So I'm not that concerned about these things, but there's a topic that many people aren't talking about, or it's one that should be talked about a lot more. I'll put it that way, in a lot more detail, and it's not, and that is taxes. This will more than likely be the biggest expense for all of us in retirement.
By a pretty wide margin.
Yes, by a wide margin. And it's probably a bigger expense than some normal stock market volatility gains and losses. I mean, this is going to be a big expense in retirement. And
a lot of our clients, we may see $1 million paid over their retirement in taxes or more. That's not uncommon.
No.
I would say that's actually fairly common.
That's fairly common. If you plan for a 30-year retirement, let's just say you retire at 62 and you live till 92, very likely you're going to pay $1 million in taxes. I mean, it's very possible. So it's a huge expense, but yet it's not talked about in enough detail for people to know what's actually going on. What is happening? What should we be doing? And so RMDs are one. We talk a lot about the national debt. So that's a big one. And the number that's thrown around, and it changes, it feels like by the minute. So whatever I say is going to be off by the time, this segment
probably
even
off
ends.
by a couple $1 trillion.
Right. So it's pushing 34 trillion. Is that accurate?
I think it might be pushing 35.
35 trillion now.
Yep. Closer to $35 trillion.
So $35 trillion is what the advertised national debt is. And that's what that number is. But what that doesn't represent is all of the future unfunded liabilities. So Matt, this is your thing. Matt does better than anybody else I know at talking about these kind of topics and breaking down what can feel pretty complicated into a very digestible. So Matt, what's a future unfunded liability?
Well, the best way, I think, to describe a future unfunded liability is just to first recognize that the government gets to do accounting different than the rest of us. So maybe you're a small business owner, maybe you're a retiree, you got some qualified money, maybe you've got a W-2. The government doesn't play by the same rules when it comes to how they represent their balance sheet as the rest of us. So I like to think of it in terms of a mortgage. Aaron, if you go out and housing prices in the Atlanta area skyrocketing, let's say you want a nice swanky little condo downtown. Let's say you pay, I don't know,
overlooking the park. And all that? Oh, yeah. Okay.
What would you pay for that? $1 million maybe?
Probably $1 million.
Okay. You got $1 million condo. Let's say you put down 20%. So you got $200,000 down. You got an $800,000 mortgage. If you were doing your balance sheet, the $800,000 would show up as a liability.
It'd be a debt. Absolutely.
It'd be a debt. Now, the reason it's going to show up on your balance sheet is because you got to pay that.
Yeah.
Now, that's not due right now. Correct?
Correct. I got 30 years. So
You
or
got- okay,
15,
you got-
whatever mortgage I pick. Yeah.
Not due right now.
Yeah.
But it's showing up on your balance sheet because it is due.
My net worth is now $800,000 less,
Okay.
even though it's not due right now.
So those mortgage payments that you're going to make in the future, that would be a future liability, but it's going to show up on your balance sheet today.
Yep.
So the government does something different. If they have something that they need to pay in the future that they're not currently paying on right now, it doesn't show up as U.S. national debt, which is the $35 trillion number. That's going to show up as a future liability, a future unfunded liability. And so what most future unfunded liabilities, what that is made up of for the most part, is going to be our entitlement programs. So all the payments for Social Security and all those other entitlement programs that we will have to pay in the future, but we're not paying now, those are future unfunded liabilities. Our national debt, the debt payments that we're not paying now, but we will have to pay in the future, that's a future unfunded liability. But all these things, when we talk about $35 trillion in debt, it's so much worse than that, because if the government had to do accounting the way that we would do accounting, the way that you do accounting, the way that any small business owner does accounting, the U.S. national debt would actually be like north of $130 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
But the government doesn't have to account for it that way because they don't have to pay on it now. They're going to have to pay on it in the future.
Right.
And so, man, if you think things are bad now from a debt standpoint, just realize, we've talked about inflation before too and how that's underreported. If you think our debt's bad now, just realize that it's actually like 5 times worse. If the government had to play by the same rules that we play by, we would see a 5x number on the U.S. national debt balance sheet. And so how do you solve that problem? How does the government solve a problem of spending and debt? There's only 2 levers that the government has at its disposal to solve the problem of our ever-increasing debt.
Can I take a guess?
Sure.
One of those levers, raising taxes.
That's one
You
of the
got it.
levers.
yeah.
One lever is tax more.
Okay.
What's the second lever?
Can I take a guess?
Take a guess.
Ooh, Mark Owens front. Hey, how you doing, Mark
Take
Owens?
a guess.
Smyrna, Georgia. Thanks for having me out here today. Lever one,
First-time
raising
caller?
taxes. First-time caller, long-time listener.
Great.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me on the show. Is lever two spend less? I'll hang up and listen.
Lever 2 is spend less.
What a student.
We got two levers. The government can tax more or they can spend less. Now, here's where it gets interesting, and here's why we talk about taxes, and this is probably why you're starting to get a little, getting that heated
getting fired
feeling.
up
Your
here.
blood's starting to boil. You're
Yep.
starting to sweat a little bit. I
Here
can
we go.
see it. Angry and agitated Aaron. The government can't actually spend less enough mathematically to pay off our future unfunded liabilities.
Only one lever left.
Yeah, it's actually not mathematically possible to spend less enough. The government could spend $0 a year. They could spend $0 a year. And if they're collecting, let's just give them the benefit of the doubt, and let's give them a small tax increase. Let's say that they're collecting around $5 trillion a year in taxes, which I don't believe that they are. It's a little bit less than that. But let's just say that they were. $5 trillion a year in taxes, just to pay off the number that's actually reported, $35 trillion, we'd have to spend $0 a year for 7 years in a row
Just to break even.
just to break even on what's actually reported. That's not the $130, $140 trillion of future unfunded liabilities.
Not to mention, we're talking about even defense spending and all the stuff that's critical.
We're talking about entitlement
We need
programs, Social Security programs.
Right. So
I
the
want
point
y'all
is,
to tell Congress they're not getting their paycheck. Go ahead and tell them, see how they feel about that.
Right.
Wait, before we get to angry and agitated Aaron, let me give the number out there real quick. 770-741-0120. Really deep conversation, really good conversation this weekend about the importance of having a tax strategy. When you sit down with the team of the Vincent Financial Group, they want to take a deep dive into your taxes. See, are you paying too much? Is there a way we can mitigate some of your taxes? What adjustments can be made? 770-741-0120. Always available at retireatlradio.com. Aaron, the floor is yours.
oh, here we go. All right, let me just make something really clear before I get going here. I don't mind paying my fair share of taxes. I actually like having nice roads to drive on. I like having a good police force. I like having fire departments in case my house catches on fire. I don't mind paying my fair share in taxes. So don't hear me on my rant here in a minute about taxes are wrong. What gets me fired up is the fact that all that Matt just described, all true, all factual, not an opinion, not conjecture, it's all real. We owe north of $130 trillion in a real national debt, and no one's talking about it. It's like this smoke and mirrors game of like, let's change the terminology. Let's make our debt seem less. Let's make it seem like it's 35 trillion, not 130 plus trillion. It's this game that's being played, and there's no, it's going to affect every single one of us and our kids and our grandkids even more.
Can I
than
take
likely.
it one step further?
Please.
Because I made, tongue in cheek, what if we spent $0? Okay, and it would take 7 years of spending $0, collecting $5 trillion a year to pay off what's reported. But we all know that that's fantasy land,
never gonna happen.
obviously. Okay. Well, hear this. We got to start getting smarter as a voting population, and we just got to get a little bit more educated. Go to usdebtclock.org, and on there you'll see a little subsection where it totals up the 4 largest expenditures that we have, and it's pretty much entitlement programs. You have Medicare, Medicaid, $1.7 trillion. You have Social Security, $1.4 trillion. You have defense spending, $900 billion. And you have interest on our debt, which right now is right around $900 billion. The last time I did the math on this, those 4 programs alone spent 97 cents of every dollar that we collect in taxes. So we're talking about spending $0 in taxes, but the reality is this. If we stripped away everything we spent money on, except our 4 largest line items, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, interest on our debt, and defense spending, if that's all we spent money on, we'd have 3 cents left over for every dollar we collected in taxes.
It's not
So
gonna work.
no. This is
Even in fantasy land, it won't work.
This is a math problem.
Right.
This is a math problem. This is not a political problem at this point. This is a math problem. And the sooner we all wake up to the fact that this is a math problem, the sooner people start thinking, maybe I shouldn't be on the hook for the future tax increases that mathematically are going to have to take place.
Yes. And this is where my agitation begins. So that is the situation that we're in. Now, it's bad enough. That's our truth. That's our reality. Mm-hmm. But what makes it worse is that there's a lot of effort by our politicians and others to try to make it seem as though that's not the case. Because I don't care what situation you want to talk about in life, taxes is one of them. As bad as things might be, at least if you know the truth, you can react accordingly and do what you need to do to get out of that situation. Well, if what's being talked about from the politicians that we listen to and from the media that's shoving stuff in our face all the time, if that's the information that we have, to Matt's point, we got to get smarter. If that's all that we have, we don't even know the problem is as bad as it is. And so then things start coming down the line like RMDs. Well, all that really is a fancy way of saying, I want to increase your tax bracket now without saying I'm increasing your tax bracket. That'd be political suicide. If I'm running for some office and I say, hey, I'm going to run on the ballot by saying, I'm going to increase everyone's taxes because we have a debt problem.
Some people do that.
That's true. And guess who doesn't get elected? Those people. So this is the problem that we're in. And that's why no one talks about it. So here's the reality. Because no one's going to run on a ticket saying, I'm the one that's going to raise the taxes, they start to find these nice little creative ideas, like a required minimum distribution, to say, here's a way for us, the government, to collect more from you without saying what's actually happening. We're raising taxes. Or I'll take it a step further. Recently, in the past several years, I forget what year it was around COVID, the Secure Act came out.
Yep.
And it's funny that it's called the Secure Act. Nothing about it makes us more secure. But one of the many things in the Secure Act that is stipulated is that if you inherit an IRA, so Mark, let's just say one of your parents passes away and they've got $500,000 in an IRA when they die. Well, guess who gets that? You do. Congratulations. Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Hey, what a blessing. You know, mom and dad worked hard and you get to get some of the benefits from it. I hope I can pass something along to my kids someday. Well, in years past, you had your lifetime essentially to spend that money down. Well,
because
now,
it's a qualified account.
Correct.
And there were still, now there's not an RMD because Mark's not 73.
Correct.
He's younger.
You're much younger. You're 30 years away from your RMD age, so it's not an issue for you.
But that government needs to start taxing those dollars because there should have been an RMD on it at some point coming up.
Correct.
And so they're going to let you, in the past, stretch out the distributions from that inherited IRA over your lifetime. Over your lifetime.
That was the way it used to be before the Secure Act.
And then the Secure Act
says you have to spend that $500,000 down over 10 years. So now, by default, you've got an extra $50,000 of income you've got to claim, which means what? Now you're in a higher tax bracket.
And now they're going to get taxed on that extra. You're going to get taxed on that extra $50,000.
Not only are you going to get taxed on that $50,000 because that's taxable income, but more than likely that extra $50,000 now puts you into a new higher tax bracket. So now you're paying a higher percentage of taxes on a bigger amount of money, compounding your tax problem. But hey, don't worry, we're not raising tax rates.
It feels sneaky.
Yes, that's what makes me
Okay, we got to take a break. I want to know next, what can you do? Aaron Vincent, Matt Decker, Vincent Financial Group. What can you do for us to help with our tax situation? What plans are you putting together for the people listening this weekend that are now also angry and agitated like Aaron is right now? So what can you do to help us out? Let's have that conversation. Let's talk about the buckets in retirement as well. We'll get to that plus a lot more. 770-741-0120. Again, 770-741-0120. RetireATLradio.com. This is Retire ATL, and it's all powered by the Vincent Financial Group.